Hello everyone, it's Becky here and welcome back to my channel and welcome back to a new video. So today finally I'm doing my January wrap-up, but I don't think I'll keep you too long with this video because unfortunately I must say that my January when it comes to reading wasn't that great. I did read 4 books, but unfortunately, I created this new spread in my reading journal for 2023 which I did not have in my previous reading journal, and that's one page where I basically made like a little column for every single month in the year, and I was planning to write there my favorite book of the month. So later on in the end of the year when I will be picking my favorite books or making maybe video about favorite reads, it would be a little bit easier for me to remember all those books because I would already pick the favorite of the month. And let me tell you that from 4 books which I read, I do not have a single book which I would put in that column because those books were not that bad, but I just really cannot pick the one which would be my favorite. So I'm probably not gonna be telling you that much about those books, or at least too much positive stuff. So anyway, without further ado, I will start with the first book, which I actually started to read back in December, and it's called The Priory of the Orange Tree. This book was read with lovely Gemma from Gemma Books, and we had it as buddy read. And I'm so grateful because I did buddy read with her previously, and if it wasn't for her, I would absolutely stop reading this book probably like very early on. But I love buddy reading with her, and her comments and her voice message she was sending me were always really like encouraging and kept me going. And to be honest, I think I will struggle a little bit to actually explain to you what the book is about if you have never heard of it, although I think that the book is quite famous at this point, but I'll try. So there is quite a lot of characters. However, I would say that the main one, at least for me, was the character called Eat Durian, and she was so there is several kingdoms in this world, and basically we have different characters from different worlds, and they are all trying to it's a classic story of the kind of, let's say, Game of Thrones, where you have several kingdoms and they are all trying to basically connect the forces against one common enemy which can destroy them all. And yeah, I would say that's the basic premise. You know what? No, I'll probably just borrow the description. I will put it in on the screen because I apologize, but I cannot even really tell you what the book is about. So anyway, my impressions from the book. It was the first time when I was reading a high fantasy book. I have never read it before, but I was very interested because I wanted to try something new this year, and I wanted to also try more of a fantasy books, and I tried to find out the one which would be a standalone because, as you know, I do not have that much experience with series, and I thought that it would be quite nice to try this one. And when I heard that Gemma is planning to read this, I immediately jumped on the opportunity and I said I would love to buddy read with her. So I did enjoy the book to a certain level. I think that the world building was really fascinating. There were so many characters, and that was the first problem I had with the book or issue. There were so many characters that I really was losing the count of them and the idea of who is who very early on, and this basically lasted until the very end of the book, which is 800 pages or 900. And even when I finished the book, I still was a little bit confused of who is really who. And then the best part happened because I realized that right at the very very end, there is the whole character description about every single character. I was like, right? But another issue which I had, which is my fault, I could literally make a video about how not to read a high fantasy book, especially for the first time. So first one, don't be like me and do not read very long books in general, and especially fantasy book with a lot of characters and a lot of storylines. Don't read them on your like phones or Kindles. Don't have ebooks. You need a physical book, because for me this would be so much easier to be able to just, you know, list several pages back or forward and kind of like catch up about who is who, let's say, regarding the characters. And maybe it would even occur to me to kind of swipe through pages to the end and then, or actually early on, discover that there is the whole character description, because that's something I was really missing, and then I realized that at the very end. And then the second, do keep notes, which was another mistake I did, because it's quite surprising to me because I do like annotating books, but for some reason I absolutely did not do any sort of annotating here. I was just writing my notes, what I want to discuss with Gemma as I was reading, but I did not keep like proper notes about characters, who is who, or the storyline, or what is actually happening. So I think that for someone who is like me reading this fantasy type book for the first time, it was really challenging to keep up with all the storylines and plots and everything happening in the book. Also, the last thing I did not enjoy about the book as much was the fact that at the beginning there was so much of a world building and obviously introduction to different characters, and everything was building up quite well, and because there were so many different storylines, I was kind of fearing with Gemma as well that the ending might come very quickly, because it's still like 900 pages book and somehow you need to wrap it up. And I know that, although I haven't read them, I know that for some authors they literally take several books just for a world building, and then, you know, the ending is also kind of spreading through a whole book. But here I also felt that the ending came quite quickly, and I wasn't really satisfied with how, not necessarily how it ended, but the way how it was written. So this is probably a very confusing review of a book, and I apologize, and definitely recommend you to check Gemma's channel when she's gonna be doing a wrap-up about this book, because I'm sure she will give you so much better idea about what the book is about actually, and then some better wrap-up about this book. But yeah, in general I gave this book 3 stars. I did enjoy certain parts, certain characters. I found them very well written and the way they developed throughout the story. However, it was way too many of them for me, and then if I will ever be reading high fantasy like this, I'll definitely remember to check at the very beginning if in the end of the book there is some character descriptions or anything which can be valuable for my experience or knowledge, and then also to keep the notes, because that's very important. Right, my friends, so that was the book number 1. And then the second book which I read was the one which I was very much looking forward to, and I started to read this book as well in December, but I did finish it in January when I come back here to Scotland, because the book was waiting for me, and it's this one, focus, good, by Matthew Perry. This was his memoir, and it was very interesting, strange experience, because I do love Matthew Perry very much, and obviously Friends is something I adore with all my heart, and especially Chandler, and I also seen a couple of his other movies, and I always really liked him as an actor and as a person from what I knew. But I did struggle to read this book, because several times as I was reading I had the urge to put the book down and just don't finish it and just never pick it up again. Okay, so what is the story about? Obviously this is a memoir, so Matthew Perry is introducing us his whole life, how basically from the very beginning, even before he was born, his father sort of like decided that he will pursue his career as an actor, and he left Matthew's mother while she was still pregnant with him in her early 20s. So she had to raise him by herself, but also got married later and had another family with her new husband, and how all of this deeply affected him from very early years and very early childhood, to the point that he felt like he is not worthy of love and everyone will always leave him, according to some other things that also happened later on in his life as he was becoming an adult. And it's very sad, and there is also a lot of trigger warnings about you know, loneliness, feeling abandoned, and of course addiction, because this is what the book is about in a huge part, and I really admire how open and honest he was talking about his struggles with addiction to drugs and alcohol especially. So it's something to be aware of, and it's very difficult for me to judge this book, because I think that person who goes through something like this, obviously it's not something anyone would choose for themselves, but there were just certain things which did not sit well with me, and it made me dislike him almost as a person, not because of the addiction or the things he said or done whilst he was struggling, but rather some other stuff, let's say, as whilst he was sober, I don't know, dating 2 women at once for a long period of time and no have any needs to tell them, and then be surprised when they find out and basically left him, or certain parts regarding money, which is very stupid. So he was offered to act in a series which he really liked the script, and he was seriously considering to not taking the part because they were offering him only £50,000 per episode, as comparing to Friends, which was 1 million, and he was so unhappy about this that he was thinking he will just not take the job, although he really liked the script, and then eventually landed on almost $200,000 per episode, and I was like, really? And as I said, it's very difficult to, you know, judge this book or him as a person. I definitely don't want to do it, because I cannot really understand, because I never experienced luckily anything like this in my life, and I can imagine how difficult it must be and I understand that even if you have people in your life who love you, who take care of you, and you are very privileged, as in some cases here regarding the money or people in your life, when you are really in the low point, it just doesn't matter because you feel like those people are not there or they're gonna leave you. So I understand these struggles, and I'm not talking about, you know, as I said, things he done whilst he was struggling directly with these addictions and drugs and all his problems, but it's rather about how he behaved while he had those bright moments of sobriety, which did not really sit well with me. Hope this clarifies what I meant. So yeah, this was also 3 stars for me, and I don't think I will be, you know, like rereading this book. Let's say some other memoirs, which because you know I love memoirs, and I read a couple of them, and some of them I keep on my shelf very happily, and I know that maybe one day I will reread them. I don't think that will be the case of this book. Okay, another book which I finally finished and read this year is The Tattooist of Auschwitz, which was very much anticipated book for me, which I had on my shelf for over a year almost, because I bought it last February in charity shop, and I really wanted to read this, but for some reason I never really got into it until the point now in January, because as many of you know, January 27th is the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, so I decided that I do want to finally read this book, and I managed to read it in 2 days. However, I still gave this book 3 stars because there were certain things that did not sit as well with me. Obviously, the story is not very easy to read, and there are so many trigger warnings to be aware of because of just the topic we are reading about. This is a story of a Lejl Sokolow, who is actually from Slovakia, and he's a young man who ends up, as many other people, in Auschwitz concentration camps, and he basically gets a post of tattooist, so he tattoos the numbers of the prisoners in their forearms. And at the very beginning of the story he also meets there a girl, and they fall in love, and obviously they devote their life there to hope to survive and basically build their future together. And this is what the book is about, mostly about this love story, but also portraying the horrible things that happened within World War II and whole concentration camps, you know, stories. I did enjoy the writing style and the way it was written. I did like all the characters. It was very touching, it was very heartbreaking. However, because I think that partially a couple of the characters were from Slovakia and there was Slovakia mentioned as well, I would never dare to say that I know more historically about the time period that the author does, because obviously, like, I know my country, but still in certain years I do not have as much knowledge. But I must confess that this book made me do a little bit of fact checking, and some things I wasn't really sure about, so I don't know if this was the reason, but I was just reading the book and sometimes I was like, I'm not sure about this. So it was very strange feeling for me to read this book. However, I'm very glad I read this, and I would like to encourage everyone to, you know, read books like this from this time period and watch the movies, although it's very difficult, but we need to do it because we see what's happening in the world right now, and these things always start with just, you know, it doesn't start immediately with concentration camps, but it's just something which is a result of people just not being kind to each other, and that's just constantly builds up, and then things like this happened. So please keep reading and reminding ourselves that we need to prevent things like this from happening ever again. And then the last book which I was reading in January, however, this book remained unfinished, but not because it's DNF'd, because for me, if I say that I DNF book, usually it really means that I am not planning to pick the book again. However, this one, it is not finished yet for now, but I'll definitely pick it up soon. And it's this one, Stanley Tucci, Taste My Life Through Food. I love Stanley Tucci, and this was a gift from my sister for my birthday, and I was really excited to read this book, and I do enjoy it so far, but I am only in the middle of it approximately, and I think I need a little break, because this book, as much as I love memoirs, is sort of like memoir of food in his life, which obviously makes sense also because of the title, but I was expecting, or I was hoping that there would be really a lot of like memoir style things regarding his memories about life and childhood maybe, but everything is literally through food. So besides having some great recipes in this book, which I definitely noted some of them down, I would say that sometimes it's a little bit too much of food content for me, because whatever he is describing in this book, he always mentioned it sort of like from the point of view of the food. So let's say when he speaks about his childhood and places where he lived with his family, he speaks mostly about the restaurants in the area and how they were cooking and what they were cooking and how the people in the restaurants were, which is very interesting because it also gives you an idea about the different cultures from, let's say, him as a person who is coming from Italian heritage and then living in America, so sort of like comparing these different cultures. And also this is great when you're interested in, let's say, Italy and Italian kitchen, which is something I absolutely love. But I would just say that I was maybe hoping it would be a little bit less about the food, no matter how much I love the food, because I really do. So I think that overall this is something I'm including in my wrap-up because I don't think I will finish it now in January. However, definitely will finish it at some point soon. But yeah, I just kind of need to take a little break. Right, my friends, so those are all the books which I read in January. I was hoping to read a little bit more, but because the Priory of the Orange Tree is really big and chunky book, I just did not manage to read more, and also because I was half of the month still in Slovakia with my family, la 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 la. So there were happening so much other stuff besides books, but now I'm really excited to be back in the booktube world and read more and also watch other of your videos. So please let me know if you read any of these books. I think that there might be some which some of you already read, so please share your opinions in the comments and let me know what you think. And hopefully to see you soon with another video. Take care and bye bye.